The new Game of Thrones HBO's betting on is called Westworld. But what do we really know about it?
So Westworld is a story that a lot of people don't know about because the teaser trailers that HBO has put out in the last 2 years don't tell you squat. We're going to kind of outline what the story is, where it came from, starting with the fact that it was written by Michael Crichton. Michael Crichton is, of course, the author of numerous sci-fi epics such as Jurassic Park, something.
Best list.
Thanks for the help.
Thanks for the help.
The other stuff. No.
Wait,
Outbreak.
We did the lawyer one.
All right. Do we need a list? Do we need a list? No.
You know, it's Michael Crichton.
It's
You know who Michael Crichton is.
The way the story goes is that Michael Crichton was told that he would never be able to make a Hollywood film. He would never be able to, because he was a novelist, he'd never be able to have the chops to write one. Westworld was written back in the early 70s, and it was his attempt to write a Hollywood screenplay. He then took that, it was turned into a film in 1973, took that and used that story basis, which is about a amusement park that essentially goes haywire, and made the epic Jurassic Park.
Correct.
A lot of things in the HBO series have not been really identified. We do know who's in it. Anthony Hopkins,
right?
James Marsden, who played Cyclops in X-Men,
right,
and was in Love Actually and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Right.
No?
Jeffrey White,
James
which
Marsden
is a
was
really
in
great
Love
actor.
Actually.
Well,
There's
he
also
should have been.
Evan
and
Rachel
Rachel
Wood.
Wood.
Jeffrey Wright, and other people that are wearing cowboy hats.
So in the story, there are actually 3 worlds, 3 amusement parks. There is the medieval world, there is the Roman world, and then there is Westworld, which is actually the most popular one because it actually takes place in 18th century.
Do we have a location? I don't think we have a location
It's
yet.
a world.
But it's basically, it's a Western. You know what a fucking Western looks like. It did seem like they had action that was happening outside of Westworld.
Yes. So
Correct.
the other part, and this is stuff that we know from the pre-existing films from the 70s, is part of the story. A large part of it takes place in the actual parks, and the parks are just like, imagine Disney World, where you go, you spend a week there, and basically the big deal is it's kind of an adult amusement park, even though families go there. You can do anything. So you go into a saloon at Westworld and, you know, have a whiskey and then shoot somebody in the face. And all the people that are around you that are not other visitors of the park are androids. And they bleed like normal. You can have sex with them. It's basically just wide open.
You know, I can tell you, the last time I took a vacation, what I really wanted to do was shoot someone in the face. It's the most calming thing. So basically,
But
we're saying
there's repercussions though. You do that and you're now outlaw. Or you can also, conversely, someone's getting a fight, you can now be the good guy.
Yeah. So this is basically an overglorified MMO. Is what we're saying. This is the next step from Pokemon
I'm really
Go.
looking forward to the trolls.
It's like Pokemon Go and then this. That's what
Well,
we're
actually,
doing.
the trolls are the NPCs.
That's true. Actually, the way the original Westworld story works, and we're not quite sure what the new story is going to do, but in the original one, the androids start to gain sentience and aren't happy with getting their faces blown off, apparently.
When will scientists learn you cannot trust androids?
Right.
We saw what happened with Data.
They were so busy.
Oh.
They were so busy asking themselves if we could. They never stopped to ask if we should. The real question here is whether or not this story can compete with Game of Thrones, because the way that HBO is pitching this is that it is going to be their new tentpole production after Game of Thrones. And they've been in production for a long time. They've been in development for a long time, and it's not super clear where everything's going yet.
And it does seem that HBO is actually looking to push this directly to Game of Thrones viewers. You know, I don't know if you saw, but on HBO Go, they actually have like advertisements for Westworld, where it's like, I'm trying to watch Game of Thrones, and this is some. It seems to me dynamically different content than what we're seeing in Game of Thrones. I mean, the whole reason we watch Game of Thrones now is to hate watch Cersei. So I'm not sure how you relate that into anything else.
Right.
On the upside, from the production side, you have J.J. Abrams, who's the executive producer, and his team at Bad Robot. Obviously, they did a fantastic job with the new Star Wars movie, unless you're a psychotic Star Wars fan, in which case nobody can help you.
And they did a really good job with the reboot of Star Trek.
Star Trek.
After that.
Yeah.
But the first film was
They made
good.
movement. They turned Star Trek into space exploration and more of a teen drama. But I hear what you're saying. I appreciate the fact they toned down the lens flares. More of a story that doesn't blind you anymore.
Mildly turned it down.
So wait,
notch.
I heard a rumor that in the editing room for the new Star Wars that Abrams at one point went in and just said cut every lens flare, and it took him like 5 weeks. So it was really
There's a dedicated editing team just to get all those effects out of there. They were hiding. But the question is it going to be something that Game of Thrones fans will resonate with? Because Game of Thrones is a story really about families. If you want to come down to it, it's really 2 or 3 families that are really driving the story forward outside of the external, evil bad guys. Westworld doesn't really have that dynamic, or at least it didn't, as according to the stories that were written before.
Maybe you said it was a family park. Maybe a family goes into the park and
never comes out.
Well, they have to deal with the consequences of people's actions. That's where I think this is going to be tied in.
Yeah.
Where you have, your family doing actions, because you can go separately. Your family can go in, but you as an individual can go off to do your own.
Because that's what we always love. Dad goes off to have some time with the hooker.
Good question. If you're having sex with an android, is it a hooker? Or is it
Did you pay her?
masturbation?
Did you pay her?
You paid somebody.
That's a hooker. We've seen stories that aren't really driven around a singular family that work. Battlestar Galactica is a really good example of that.
Exactly.
But even with Battlestar Galactica, it really was driven by this small crew and the end of humanity. Like there was a large drive behind that. Right. So I don't know how that translates into, and I go back to Minority Report, which was another show that was very futuristically driven,
And
that didn't do so well. Right. And again, I wonder if that is one of those things that it just doesn't connect, because we do connect to these family dramas, because we all have these family dramas, and seeing how other people deal with them or laughing at them.
It sucks when your cousins have dragons and you don't.
Well, I also think that there are the stories that we're tying to. We're actually looking for the thematic behind it.
Yes.
This thing, I think there's a lot of thematic, because you're going back in the future or back in the past and reliving that. But then there's also how you feel in the future and having to deal with those consequences. The whole thing about the reason Westworld was so popular was because you could do anything. The Roman world, there was a lot of orgies and stuff like that. The medieval, you could get in these epic fights. But Westworld was a free-for-all. It was you could do anything. And I think that's where we're going to see a lot of our drive to it, is because you can do anything. You're going to see them do anything.
But I still wonder, as a viewer, I connect to Game of Thrones easily through the Stark family. Like, that's my understanding of, even as a reader, my understanding of Game of Thrones is how the Stark family sees the world.
House Martell.
Or how fucking stupid they are. In
Well, no, so, I'm sorry.
House Martell.
She's the matriarch of House Martell is my spirit
wait.
animal.
Yes.
Because that bitch is fierce.
Oh my
Sand
God.
Six. Wait, no. What is
We'll
it?
just act
Bad
like you didn't
Pussy?
say anything. But I wonder how do you bring that connection through on a story like this? Even another Bat Robot production, Almost Human, it kind of failed because it didn't have that connection. Where do we connect to these characters?
That's
and
what
why do we care?
scares me about Westworld. I think that the biggest problem that they are going to have to surmount is this emotional involvement that people have. If you're going to compare it to Game of Thrones,
I think how they're going to do it. I think
are we going to be like, hey, it's 6:00 on Sunday, turn on the TV?
Right.
And I don't know if they're going to be able to pull that off.
I
That's
think
tough.
they will. I think they will, because again, this was based off of. The way that this was built is this is a theme park that goes wrong, and this is where we're gonna get drawn in at.
But see,
it's gonna get drawn in is something's gonna go wrong. I don't know how they're gonna play this out, but when it went wrong, you felt really emotionally worried for those people who were in there.
But what also worries me is that we've already, if we're going to be totally honest, we've already done this story. Jurassic Park already exists. When this story came out originally in '73, there was no Jurassic Park. The concept of going to a music park and getting killed was very Disney made sure that was not something people thought about.
Right.
Now we're seeing people getting eaten by monsters, and it's kind of like, well, you go to a music park that's kind of on the upper end of tech, and you're doing a bunch of crazy stuff. You might factor in the fact that you might lose Johnny or Billy or somebody.
To an alligator even.
Too
soon?
Oh.
Too soon? Okay.
Oh,
Well, I think that's going to be an interesting thing to see how they overcome, because I think more than anything, what made Game of Thrones work is we connected to those characters quickly. We connected to Sean Bean almost instantly, even though we all knew he's going to die because he's never done a film where he doesn't die. I think that really kind of drove the connection.
I actually think that's a very good point.
That Sean Bean has never done a film.
This is a spoiler for people who haven't watched Game of Thrones, and if you haven't watched Game of Thrones, I'm not quite sure
why you're watching this video.
But when Sean Bean gets his head lopped off, I think everybody had the same fucking reaction. Like, okay, well, obviously fucking around. Like, he's coming back, right?
And by everybody, he means people.
And
who
then they
don't
do
read.
the slow mo. Oh, wait, that is his head going off, and it goes bouncing into the crowd. And you're like, well, maybe it was a body double, and Sean Bean, starts in the back, and then after a while, you like the fucking cuts to black, and you're like, oh fuck, they killed him. And so I think that if they don't find a way to come up with that kind of utter shock, where it's like they make it clear you're not watching the same type of programming that you've watched before, they're gonna have a problem making that connection. And I think also the connection we're talking about with the family, those are important things. There are reasons why Game of Thrones is like must see TV. Even though I hate that term,
and I think there's a sexuality thing that's let Smith.
You're right. People like dicks. People like tits.
I'm just looking at the cast.
Floppy wieners.
I think Anthony Hopkins is a wonderful actor. That's great, but I don't want to see his ass. I don't want to see his dick.
He has been working out for it.
Oh, that's great.
So him and assless chaps is something that a lot of people are not expecting, but it could be
that
something.
Could be riveting.
It could be
riveting. I don't think that word means
like watching a train wreck. Let's put it that way.
You just can't look away.
So either way, there's a lot of danger in trying to replace Game of Thrones, but obviously, HBO doesn't have a choice here. We're excited because honestly, you could not possibly get a whole lot better in terms of the quality of the production team that's going into this. Obviously, the amount of money that they're willing to put behind it, and Jonathan Nolan is an amazing writer. So it's very likely this is going to be a sci-fi epic unlike anything that's come before it. Hopefully it does well. We'll definitely be watching, and once more trailers come out, if anything comes that we think is worth discussing further, we'll definitely make another video about it. But please, let us know what you guys think. Leave us comments, like the video, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.